Hello, everybody. It's me, Marceline. To many of you, you are watching another Decada 90s vibe live stream. And today, it's not going to be about NU 107. And I know a lot of you tuning in are here because of those broadcasts, but it is sort of connected. Um, I can't wait to introduce you to this really amazing, talented human being, Whilce Portacio. Wait a minute. Where's Whilce? There he is. Countdown. There you go. Hey, Whilce.
Hey, long time no see.
I know. We actually I am lucky I get to see Mr. Whilce Portacio, world famous comic book artist. Um, at least once a year when I attend WonderCon or any of those cons, and he's always there. I asked my son if he remembers meeting you because at the time, like 2 years ago, he was really, really into art, and he said, "Of course, I remember Will's." Uh, he did. I am happy to report he did get into the art school,
Oh, cool.
but not for visual arts, for culinary.
Oh, wow.
And guess what his audition piece was?
What?
You had to come up with their own recipe, adobo. So anyway, people also watching here in the U.S., it is Asian American Pacific Islander Month. So great timing because if there's one inspirational Asian American, it would be Will. So maybe let's walk back and talk about that. You were born in the Philippines, right? But when did you move here? Yeah.
My dad was in the Navy, the U.S. Navy. So I'm a Navy brat. So I
Hmm.
was born in '63, and
See what?
when I was 2 years old, I actually came over here. So
Okay.
I'm 56 now. So I've been here for 54 years. And that's actually kind of interesting in, like then when we met in the 90s, that was my, I mean, growing up in the US as an American, and like a lot of other Pinoys back then, my parents only spoke English to me just so I wouldn't, get picked on in school. And it worked out for me. I
Oh,
was
cool.
the little skinny kid in school, didn't know what didn't know what to do, didn't know what about anything, and so I didn't get picked on. But that left a deficit in me. In I didn't know anything about being Pinoy.
Okay.
Especially back then. Now there's a lot of quote unquote non Pinoys that can go over and eat Jolly Bee or
Right.
lumpia and stuff. But back then, especially in the '70s, even in Hawaii, where I was, there really wasn't anything Filipino. There
Oh,
really was
wow.
no sign. In fact, when I was in high school in Hawaii, there was so little Pinoy anything anywhere, books, movies, stories, anything. I actually became Japanese because my friends are Japanese.
Right, right.
So when we met in the '90s was my actual conscious choice of coming back to the Philippines every year to find my roots. To I didn't even know Tagalog. Well, you remember, you know.
Right, but how did you learn? It was by being, so before that, had you gone back to the Philippines at all as a child?
Um, the first time we went back, I was about 14 years old. And so
Okay.
I was American as can be back then.
Yeah.
And going back in the '70s, that was about maybe '74 or '72. Going
Yeah.
back to the Philippines was, I remember it. I mean, we got to the airport, boosh, it's hot. Oh
Hot.
my God. This isn't the US. And then the traffic going to Cavite City from Manila, where we're from, was 2 hours with the traffic. Then you finally get to Cavite, and Cavite City is still Escanita. So
Right.
everything's getting my view of everything's getting smaller and smaller and crunched. And then we finally get into my parents' neighborhood, and we're in a van, a high ace, and all of a
Yeah,
sudden
it's
there's this parade behind us of relatives and people who had seen my parents for like, you know,
years.
yeah, for like 10, 12 years. And so I got the experience of proudly watching my dad going up in the streets, and my dad's Delphin, and everybody going, "Hoy, Delphin, Delphin," and then my mom going, "Oh, tingnan mo, Mayor."
Wow.
So my experience always was from, as a balikbayan, from the outside. I
Okay.
didn't understand anything at all. I was totally
Wow.
lost all the time. Um, and then we went back, and then it wasn't until '79 that my dad retired, and
Uh-huh.
he was fortunate that his last few months of retirement, he could just wait for his papers. We were in
Okay.
Hawaii at the time, and so they actually let us stay for 1 month in Subic Bay on base,
Oh,
while we were
cool.
waiting for his papers. So
Wow.
I got to slowly get into the groove. I was around
Right.
other balikbayan Pinoys, at the high school on base, all of us speaking English, and, wondering how come nothing is like the US.
Right.
And then I went in there, and we then moved to Cavite, and I went to college. And I was boarding in Manila too. I mean, so it was a real big change for me.
Change. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember that was my really big point of culture shock. Just
Coming to Manila.
yeah, because I'm by myself now. You know,
Yeah.
I'm fortunate that my boarding mates were great people, and really took me under their wing. But it was so bad for me that, whenever I cried, literally everybody was laughing. When everybody was
Oh,
laughing, I was
geez.
crying.
Hmm.
You know,
Wait, so you had a year of college in Manila?
um, uh, 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 uh,
Like a semester or something?
almost a year.
Oh,
Almost a
wow.
year.
Wow. Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I'm from PWU. I'm the first batch of
Of male.
yeah, at PWU, and so we were very popular, of course, at the time. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but because I was going through the culture shock thing, believe it or not, I was in fine arts. I was the first batch of fine
Yes.
arts
They
grad.
have a very good program
Oh
of
yeah,
fine
yeah,
arts
and
there. Yeah.
actually, some of the people still there running it are
Yeah.
my classmates. But I had such a bad time, just myself inside. I mean, I'm not saying anything about the society. It's just I didn't know anything. Nobody
Yeah.
was teaching me and bringing me into what the Philippines was like. That I actually failed. I flunked out of fine arts. I
Oh,
flunked out.
okay. So,
I was the one of their top students, and I can
yeah.
say that confidently because I was tutoring half of the school because
Oh,
I already knew
man.
I already knew anatomy at that time.
Yeah, yeah.
I've had tutors since I was in sixth grade, in Hawaii, and so I was tutoring, but I was going, the American in me was going, gosh, I'm paying tuition, but I'm teaching, I'm not learning anything.
Yeah. Jeez.
Yeah, so I flunked out. So in a roundabout way to answer your original question, I started learning Tagalog the traditional Balikbayan way. I had a girlfriend.
If you want to learn any language, guys, get a boyfriend or girlfriend. There you go.
Well,
Okay.
that helped. I mean, there is something to that. I mean, like where I really learned Tagalog was with this one girl, and she spoke very little English, and I spoke
Okay.
almost no Tagalog. But we had that desire, right?
Yes.
And so we would talk for hours, literally 1 hour about one sentence, trying to understand
Wow.
each other.
Right.
But that was the learning process, and that's why I kept at it, and slowly I was able to, finally learn Tagalog, and because of that, then I realized that was the main problem I was having. I did not understand what was happening. And once I
Oh
understood
man.
what was happening, then it's like, oh man, I fell in love. When we met, I
Yeah.
had gone back. It was already Image Times.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I was financially, career wise, stable, set up, you know. And so I go, okay, because I can and because I want to, I'm going to come back to the Philippines in 1995 and I'm going to spend 1 month there, maybe two. A good friend of mine let me use his condo, this huge condo in Ortigas, and I'm gonna just try to absorb what I can absorb for 2 months. I stayed 5 years.
Yes, I think you stayed longer than me. So backtrack. Wills is known for, of course, his work on some famous comic books that you know, like the Uncanny X-Men, The Punisher, and things like that. So I have a surprise. I'm going to show a little clip of you. You gotta see this, guys. Look how totoy he looks in this one.
Oh,
I'm gonna play it just so people can watch a bit of it.
the filming of this real trailer was a week after came back from Manila.
Wow.
That's loud. But look at that,
You're even a
Stanley.
nice guy. I don't know what you're doing over
Ooh, people.
there. But anyway, Will, you've been doing the X-Men, right?
Yes, what they officially call the uncanny X-Men.
That's right. Well, I was going to ask you about that. How many X-Men books are there now?
It seems like there's 5 million. There's officially there's Excalibur, there's X-Force, there's X Factor, and there's Uncanny X-Men, and then there's X-Men.
Son of a...
But
I mean, the X-Men and the Uncanny X-Men are two
yeah,
different ones.
they're two different teams. But see, the team I'm working on, the Uncanny X-Men, is what we could call the original X-Men, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's made up of most of it's Marvel Girl, Bobby Drake, Iceman.
Iceman.
Oh, I can't. Okay, I'm
Warren
gonna
Worthington.
stop that. How cute are you?
You
So
can't
you
see I'm wearing cowboy boots.
nice. So you were saying when was this shot with the late great Stan Lee? Of course. When was this shot? It was a series on VHS called Comic Book Greats. So that's funny because I found it. Okay. So you're like what, 21 in that photo or something in the video?
Most likely, yeah, around there. That was
Wow.
actually the time that I started going back to the Philippines. I mean, that set up my going back in 1995. I started going back on my own because, again, I had a girlfriend, so I had a reason to go there and a reason to stay a little bit and absorb myself. But so that's what that's what all my friends knew, all of Image. In fact, that if I could give you a quick story of how I started
Sure.
Image. Every year I went back in December for a whole month. Of course,
Wow.
best time to go back to the Philippines during December. And so I'm about to leave for the Philippines, and Jim Lee calls me up and he says, "Hey, Wills, something big's happened, but I can't say anything. But think about it, okay?" So I go,
Wow.
I'm going back to the Philippines, okay? So I go back to the Philippines, and a month later I come back, and Jim calls me and says, "I can finally tell you what it is, and it's Image, blah blah blah. Do you want to join?" I go, "Sure." Nothing else to do. Been in the X office, been there, done that. Let's see what else is out there. If it fails, hey, you could always do something else like animation or anything. But I just come back from the Philippines, and funny enough, when I came back from the Philippines another time, then Jim calls me up and say, "We're going to do the Stan Lee thing." Oh, really? Cool. We're going to do something with Stan Lee. And he comes by in a limousine. Jim picks me up because we're both in San Diego, and we're
Hmm.
driving, speeding our way to LA to the studio. And we do actually really good time until we hit Burbank.
Of
And we're
course.
in Burbank for 4 hours. So, so all of that shooting is after midnight.
Oh man.
Yeah. So
Wow.
in fact, there's a bit in one of the tapes where all of us, the guys, we're coming onto the set, and Stan is sleeping, and so we wake him up. Well, that actually happened. We were at the set
Wow.
and Stan was sleeping because I mean we went up till like 4:30 in the morning, And so we come up and he's sleeping, and then we wake him up, and the director goes, "Hey, let's do that on film."
That's perfect. That's so typical. So okay, let's backtrack to comics. My exposure to comics is because I have a younger brother. And so that's how I got into comics, and I knew about like the different roles you had. So how, this is just out of my curiosity, it used to be like such a process to get a book going, right? Because you've got the penciler, the inker, so different stages. How is it different now?
I'm glad you asked that, because it may seem strange to a lot of people, but let me give you some numbers. Back then, in the late 80s, when I was on X-Men, we went and, so for those that don't know, here, the top artists on the top books at Marvel um, pulled out. We all pulled out, all seven of us. We formed a company called Image after that, and that was in the 90s. But see, in the 80s, when we were doing X-Men, my books were selling about 400,000 copies a month.
Crazy.
Okay, so for a business, 400,000 a month was paying a lot. The publishing side was doing really, really well, and so
Wow.
they paid me well. They gave me good royalties, and so I was able to do those things like go to the Philippines every month on my own. Um, but back then, in the 80s and beyond, before that, nobody really knew about comics except comic fans.
Right.
There really was no comic convention. There was San Diego, but it was very, very small. It
Small.
was, yeah, it was just a little collective of people, really fans. And so my point is that back then, because we were making money for the publishing houses, but nobody was really paying attention to us, we got carte blanche. So those are kind of like
Hmm.
my golden years. I mean, once you prove yourself, so I get to the position where I prove myself, and they invite me to join the X office, the top office. Once I'm there and I bring my following over, they allow me to change the costumes to suit my artistic,
Wow.
interests. I'm allowed to seriously, every other storyline they allowed me to suggest, and then
Wow.
they allowed us then to start writing the stories. And then I created Bishop. They asked me to create a new X-Men, so I created Bishop. And so it was a great time because nobody was looking at us, right?
Hmm.
Now
Okay.
fast forward to today, where even my grandmother will bring me comic books for me to for sign for her friends, right? So now everybody knows about comic books, but believe it or not, the top selling comic book regularly is only 100,000 issues. So the publishing side isn't doing that well, but we're making a lot of
Hmm.
dividends from movies and games and toys and all that stuff. And everybody knows about us. So now all these funny little characters that we work on are very expensive and important.
Hmm.
So
Yes.
I can't change even, Superman's little curl. You know,
Right.
everybody's watching me. Everybody's paying attention to me. I can't do anything new without permission. So back then, with no eyes on us, there was so much freedom, so much creativity. I just, as a young kid, could let myself go and try to prove myself. Today, everything is so expensive and potentially worth so much more that there's very
Hmm.
little freedom today compared to back then, especially.
So, but there are like the cons. You can see that there are independent comic book publishers and artists. So maybe that's the future, right? I mean, because they still have freedom to create and change their characters and all that stuff. So that's hopeful. The whole publishing changed, so everything, like when it was a Marvel DC world, it was the same with publishing, like Condé Nast and stuff. It's the same model, and since that's changed, I guess things are evolving in the world of comics as well.
Well, a truism with anything that's successful is once something gets successful, you pigeonhole yourself. You don't want to
Mhm.
rock the boat. You don't want to mess up the formula. and so you're not successful anymore. So it's always going to take an outsider, which was then it was perfect, for us boys at Image to come and rock the boat. Because really, if you really look at what we did, what we really rocked the boat on was we took a cue from George Lucas. George Lucas,
Right.
when he was doing Star Wars, he wasn't really paying attention to, okay, how much money am I going to get as a producer and director? He was thinking about what we call ancillary, toys, merchandise, because he understood this is a kid's market, and that's what they want. Little kids, in Image, we understood that the audience, they wanted a little more than just the comic book, because the comic book comes out every 30 days.
Yes.
They
Yeah.
wanted something in between that. Well, Marvel and DC didn't want to rock that boat. I mean, they were already successful at the time. Like I said, on one book, 400,000 copies, and they had
Yeah.
two books like that. So, they didn't want to rock that, and they didn't want to introduce merchandising anymore. But that just left the door open for us to come in and prove it to them. So you're right. That's what's going to happen going forward. It's going to be the independents taking that, in the eyes of the corporate world, chance. But that's how it
Right.
happens. That's how change happens anywhere.
That's true. And so that brings us to the topic that I think the reason people are tuning in right now, shout out some people here, Rancid Hero, Michael Lopez, Lloyd Semeniano, and a few people watching, Mark Sorbo saying, "Good day, mate." So maybe he's in Australia. I don't know. So we are going to zoom in on the 90s and why people seem to have a hunger for it. From the NU107 perspective, it was a radio station doing things that no other people were doing in Manila. And the funny thing is, apart from playing rock music and grunge and all that stuff, the thing that was different was they were playing Filipino music, giving a break to bands, and that is something we have in common. So real quick, around 95, when Whilce was here, he was this hotshot balikbayan starting a studio on Balete Drive, and people were hanging out there. I believe I must have gone to Balete before I worked at NU, just from hanging out with the musicians and the boys of Alamat Comics. Shout out Budget. I know it's like 3 a.m. where you are, but I have to give props. And then, of course, someone I did eventually work with in a company called Binary Soup. It was Dino Ignacio. Also, it was just this creative melting pot, and people would find each other. I think that's what was happening. So for NU fans, I'm going to show you the one project that Whilce and I worked on, or that's how we met from the radio station. It was the redesign of the NU107 logo. The former logo was a static kind of, you know, Helvetica type uh, uh, font, and it was yellow. And I think they used that when it was new wave music, and then so now we're transitioning to the grungier stuff, and so that's why Whilce's work was super perfect. Here we go. It's so 90s. What do you think about it now? I mean, you're not a graphic designer for one thing. So now that I think of it, why did we ask you to do this? We were just so in love with you. I think we were just in love with your work and all that stuff. So,
Well,
do you remember it?
timing. It was perfect timing, because some people don't know that one of the new things, when we formed Image in the 90s, we're, just 20-year-olds. We want to break away, and we want to, try to, as much as possible, beat out the two top companies,
Right.
Marvel and DC, as much as possible. And so when we decided to publish comics on our own, we wanted to do something new. Okay, some people remember that comics before Image Comics were flat, what they call 4-color comics.
Yes.
There was no shading, there was no special effects. It was just flat color, almost like an anime cuts kind of a style. Well, we took Photoshop. Myself, Brian Haberlin, and Alex Sinclair, we took Photoshop and we figured out how to use it to color comics and then to print comics. And so my point there is we wanted something new. We wanted to look different than Marvel and DC. And so we took that. So here I am. I was the only nerd in the 7. So I had, for anybody that knows, I had my first computer in '86 and it was an Amiga 2000. It's gone now, but that computer and that knowledge allowed me then to take Photoshop and apply it to comics. And therein, I fall into desktop publishing. And so, I mean, that's what a comic book is basically desktop publishing. So we learn all that. We learn coloring. We learn desktop publishing. We learn what we can do with digital, and almost nobody was doing anything with digital.
Right. It was brand new.
Brand new. So when I come to the Philippines, it's ultra brand new, and so I'm kind of like the only one doing it. And so I think that was part of what happened, that word of mouth, that we're doing something new. And then for myself, then when I brought in some computers and I loaded it up with Photoshop, then all of a sudden I started getting all these young people wanting to come in. Like for this logo, I'm glad you guys called us, because for this logo, I really have to give props to a very dear friend of mine he's in New York now. He's a New Yorker, Francis Reyes. He was this young, pretty kid, right? I mean, gorgeous kid, but he was just a young kid. Him and Tim Yap, both I think 16 or 18 at the time. He was hanging around and being, I mean, him and Timmy, they're both polite, nice people. And so they're being polite. And slowly I see Francis edging to the computer more and more. And so I go, hey, play with it, and he just like ate it up. And so
wow,
most of the ideas here were Francis's ideas, because
I had no idea. Thank you, Francis.
Do you know Francis?
From that group, like I knew that they were in the group. I had no idea he had anything to do with this. Okay.
Well, they were attached to what was it, the Big Brothers at the time? Because, well, actually, I think maybe we should say that too, to make the picture more clearer. That here I was, a comic book guy in the Philippines in the 90s, and then all of the indie guys, Budget Tan, Jerry Alangilan, Francis Yu, everybody, then of course gravitated towards me, and kind of like forced me to open up a studio. And it was just perfect timing, because we were wanting to farm out books from Wildstorm. And
so you didn't come knowing that that's what you were going to do, the whole studio?
No, believe it or not, by this time I've been in the industry maybe 10 years, and this is Image already, so I'm at my pinnacle, right, already.
Yes.
I'm sitting pretty. I actually had this vague notion, maybe if I come back to the Philippines, and I felt the energy in Manila at the time, I got this vague notion that if I could find another niche somewhere, which is why we took this job, and then which is why I did movie posters for Chito Ronyo.
Yeah.
And I did the album covers for River Maya.
Right.
And so I actually had this notion that if I could find something else and build a studio, maybe I might retire from comics.
Wow.
But then Jerry Allen Galen comes up to me and he just keeps bugging me. But he's a polite guy. He's a freaky guy at the time, and his long hair and stuff. But he pushed me, and I opened up the studio, and I got the cream of the crop, Lanil, you and everybody. And when I showed that work to a Wildstorm, they go, dude, capitalize on it. And so that was actually the biggest crux of me staying in the Philippines, lasting longer than 2 months. So we were actually producing books back then. So Wildstorm,
for Wetworks, right?
Yeah.
Was that the
Yeah, it was a lot of our see, all 7 of us went off and did our own studio. And did our own books. Those were so successful that the kids were asking for more books, the fans. And so we immediately then expanded the studios and started bringing on new talent to do their own books for us. And so when they found out that there was this possible core of artists untouched in the Philippines, it was okay, phase two. And so they would basically just send me the budget for a book and the bare bones concept of a book. And, I found writers, I found artists, I found colorists, I found, inkers, letters, and we just produced the book. We just did it.
Right.
We sent it up, and um, it was dial up, remember back
I
then.
was gonna say, and it was faxed, fax machines.
No, actually, see, again, you got to remember there was a core of us computer nerds.
Uh-huh.
Myself and Brian Haberlin, we started because we were computer nerds. So we actually figured out that, okay, this is a little technical, but a comic book file is a
Yeah.
black and white artwork, right? That's one file put on top digitally in Photoshop of a color file.
Right.
We found out that we could separate those, and that if you joined them
Ah.
back in, they would just sync perfectly. You didn't have to do anything. You just put it back on top of each other. So what we did was we found out that the color file didn't have to be sharp because it's only the color information. So we low res that, and that was like a
Wow.
couple 100K only. So we sent
Yeah.
that file ahead, and then with the black file, we found this compression that where we could compress it down really, really drastically, and it would look horrible. But when they got it on the other, and so it was like at the most 1 meg at that time, which was a big thing
Yeah.
back at then.
Yeah.
But it was 1 meg, so it was transferable, it was shippable through the internet. So when they get it in California at Wildstorm, they can decompress it, and then it comes back to full fidelity, and then they just put
Wow.
that together. So we figured out all that stuff because of the necessity of producing books in the Philippines and having to get it across without spending all the
Gosh.
money on FedEx.
Gosh, the kids these days take that for granted. It's like it's so high tech for the time, but it's a low tech way that you figure it out with, nobody told you how to do it. That's
Well, that's
very
the
cool.
Filipino way. I mean, just to figure it out,
Yeah.
not just say, oh, it can't be done, but just to
Hey,
go.
so you've got some people watching here. Earl Dennis Bataclan and Grace Portacio Profeta. Is she related?
She's my wife's sister from Las Vegas.
Oh, there you go. Watching from Vegas. Hi, Grace. So anyway, let me describe to you guys the scene, which was Wils's house or whatever, 55 Balete. It felt like real world, MTV real world slash Big Brother house, like a bunch of artists, and I know nobody ever slept because I guess you were working on deadlines and stuff, right?
Yeah,
And then you had killer parties with bands and things like that.
that was Dave's fault.
Ah, and you knew Day Kabuhat, everybody. Were you friend? You were friends before you came back to do this, right?
We went to high school together in actually we went to high school together in Cavite City, but we became friends because we were both Navy brats from Hawaii.
Oh, gotcha. Yes, because I was gonna say she was also like balikbayan. So at the time, you have all these halfies. It's true in the modeling world, in music, and everything. People were coming back and being inspired by the scene. I suppose I've been trying to bring it up. I said it felt like it was relatively stable, as you were saying, economically. It was kind of stable. I was a martial law baby, so this was our first time out. It was Ramos was president after Cory Aquino, so it's only my second democratic experience. So there was all that, and then ideas coming from the West, but at the same time, everyone was feeling still so nationalistic, which was probably like that part that you were looking for, that Filipino side of you. I mean, by then the bases were gone. And so now you're trying to define, even for me who grew up in the Philippines, what is a Filipino? And so I think we were finding that in our art. And so we can segue now to the company, Starfire Visuals was the name of the studio you built, right? And then I remember you wanted to do comics that incorporated some Filipino characters and mythology and stuff. So maybe we can segue into that.
Well, so here I come back to the Philippines with just the intent of, finding my roots, quote unquote. And then I bump into, the Alamat indie comic kids. I start helping them out. There's a need now in the California with Wildstorm to produce comics, and so I now have a vehicle to take these kids and bring them into the professional world. And then through that, and with like I said, my experience with Francis Reyes, then figuring out that, oh look, nobody here knows anything about digital, so we become the first shop place for digital publishing, movie posters and record albums. And so a friend of Days says, hey, you want to rent our house? And so that's Balete 55, 1,000 square meters with a huge yard. It's a massive Gothic place. And to paint the picture, to set the picture perfectly, is that by the time it was finished, I brought in, I had carpenters build 10 artist tables. So on one corner, there's 10 tables with the artists there. And because I was authoritarian at the time, I didn't allow them to go home, except on weekends.
Yeah.
So I had a room for them. I had beds for them. I had a cook for them. I had a maid, a houseboy for them. And then Day goes and look, there's mirrors all over the other side. And she goes, ABS is only, a few minutes away. Why don't I go to ABS and ask them if they want to use this as a dance
Studio? Yeah.
And so the boys are doing their comic books in one corner of the living room, and the other corner, this is how big the living room was, there was a dance studio. And so the guys are oogling the dancers and the stars. And then I meet Krusty. You remember Krusty?
Oh my gosh, I haven't heard that name in so long, but yes, go on.
Yeah, so then I find out there's this huge basement. And so I go, Krusty. Yeah, Krusty is a photographer. So I go, Krusty, hey, look, you think you could do photo sessions in there? And then so Day goes to ABS with him. And now we're like having, Matt Ranillo and G. Tonji and other stars for ABS down in the basement doing pictorial
photo shoots. Yeah.
And then upstairs in the middle is basically two houses with a middle bridge in the middle. That's where then I set up the computers to do desktop publishing. Well, then Day because we're friends now with Chito Roño and Lisa Nakpil, do you remember her?
Right. Yes. Yes.
So I'm doing the album covers now for River Maya, and the E-heads are now coming over to the house all the time. And so all of a sudden, Day brings home the Big Brothers, the second
the dancers,
group, of guys. And I allowed Day to have them actually live in the other half of the studio upstairs. So it's Day with Tim Yap and Francis Reyes and Melvin of the Big Brothers and the other Big Brothers. And the Street Boys come over every now and then because Chito Roño. And then the guys downstairs with the comics, and then the rehearsals of, and so then we're now, because of Day, we're now ensconced in showbiz.
Showbiz, yeah.
My birthday comes around, and all of a sudden they're building a stage in the yard, and my party starts, and then there's the Big Brothers, there's some movie stars, there's and then River Maya gets on stage, Alamid gets on stage, everybody's on stage, and I didn't even really know who anybody was yet at the time.
Right.
And this was just the starting scene, and then we had, and then you guys found out we were there and asked permission to set up, and then you guys set up there, and I think somebody announced the address on the radio, and then fortunately we had a lot of bodyguards because all of Balete, the whole street was like crowded with fans of the dancers, fans of the bands, fans of the movie stars that were there. And, then that led to 2 weeks later, that Dave's going, hey, Levi's wants to use our ramp to look for new models for next year.
Oh, wow.
So it was this. It became, because of what you're talking about, because of the times, because of the energy that was starting to happen, and people were trying to figure out what can we now do. What is possible. We were just in the middle there. Remember, I just came there, just on my
Too
own
much.
stuff, and
Yeah.
then pushed into comics, which I'm from. And then that pulled out the desktop collaboration, pulled out the photography, pulled out the showbiz, pulled out to everything. And so then, that even then came to a point where, since we're close to ABS and GMA, like, this is Bitoy's story. He tells me he lived further away from the studios back then. And because of the traffic, he always had a hard time, a worrying time trying to beat the traffic to make his time, his
Yeah.
And so what he would do, he told me, is he would leave hours earlier, hang out at the studio playing, Street Fighter with my boys, with my artists, until call time,
Yeah.
And so that's when Francis M started hanging out, the same thing. That's when Dino started coming out. I remember it was his, I forget what birthday, I think 18th or something, and his dad bought him the James Bond BMW, remember?
The Z3.
He brought it
Yes.
over to the studio, and but see, the point is that everybody started hanging out, and it just became organically this commune place to just get together. And then that's where they met the E-Heads, and for the last few years of their collective band life, she was the manager, and she transitioned to now she's Ellie's manager. And so
Okay.
it like I told you before, I wish we had digital cameras.
Okay, that brings me. Yes, I heard you. Actually, you didn't tell me. You said that like on an interview, and I was like, yes, because like I'm struggling to find videos of that time. So leading up to these broadcasts, I'm hitting up people that were there and say, "Isn't this what happened? Am I remembering right?" Because in a way, it's good. There's no evidence, maybe.
The raves, remember the raves?
Oh, the raves. But at the same time, you wish for history's sake, right? That we did have video, because some magical creative things happened, but there wasn't. But what I was going to say, I was going to bring it to this time. So now we know what everyone's doing because of social media. I mean, I'm thankful for it. That's how you and I are still in touch after all these years. But I wonder if things would have been different if you're hanging out in Balete and then someone goes, "Hey, blah blah blah's here," because they posted on Instagram. It would have changed everything, because now you're "Hey, I'm hanging out with Wills," posting for the likes or whatever. That might have changed it, I think. So what are your thoughts on that?
Personally, I think it would have. I stayed for 5 years, and the main reason we left was we were having Joe and I were having our first child, and we wanted them to go to school here in the States. it might have pushed me out a little earlier, because I don't know if you remembered or if you really tracked it, but Day was my face.
Yes.
Day was my cover. I went to almost no meetings. I went to almost no parties, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
They allowed me, because I'm a private person, they allowed
Yeah.
me to stay the Wizard of Oz, the guy behind the
Yeah.
curtain. And so I think that if we had gone that way, Manila is a small place, and everybody knows everybody. So that's how we got the exposure that we got. But with social media, I think the exposure would have gotten so crazy. And here's another thing that maybe you don't know. My wife Jo, she was she was in showbiz. She was known. She had her own show, and so
I don't remember this. Okay, go on.
you guys don't know, but whenever we would go to Mega Mall or to Makati, we would actually stand for about 30 seconds in the doorway, where the cars
Yeah.
are, because
Yeah.
we wanted to hear if it was really maingay inside, because it happened to us a couple of times. If it was maingay inside, that means they're movie stars, right?
Right.
It was
Right.
movie stars, because my wife had a showbiz show. I got to meet like a young Sunshine Cruz and
Yeah.
and all that, and so all of those stars would always recognize my wife and want to chica with her so that they could be on the show that week.
Right.
And
Uh-huh.
so other than walking down with my wife and people recognizing her and wanting her autograph, and then other comic guys wanting my autograph, if there was an actual movie star in the building, then we would not go into the mall. We would go
Wow.
somewhere else. So if my face got splattered all over the place and everybody knew that, that's
Yeah.
all my fans knew exactly what I look like, and that, oh, hey, I'm at Mega Mall right now. I think that would have gotten too crazy for me, because again, I really at that time wanted to stay behind the scenes, to be the guy,
Right.
you know
Well, so is that the kind of guy you are? Because for one thing, being a comics guy, especially in that time, it wasn't a personality thing, right? It was your work. Your work spoke for it. I feel now the artists now, they kind of have to sell themselves as well. And so that's why they're on Instagram. They're showing behind the scenes. So do you consider yourself like a more private person?
Yeah, I am. But see, one thing that happens when you rise to a certain level in any field, and people are looking up to you, or people want to connect with you for whatever reason, and then other people, like in comics, young artists and writers want to glean some information or tips from you, or get some help in the passage through. Um, you you start to have to, you know, go up in front in
Okay.
people. And so what happens is, I knew all seven of the kids when we were all just young little punks, right? Um,
Yes.
Now every single one of them, they are who they are, but who they are in public
Yes.
is who the audience wants them to be. So you
Mm,
start learning who your audience wants you to be, and it's almost like you don't have any choice. I mean, like,
wow.
an example. I was at a party once with a lot of the Alamat guys, and River Maya was still there. It was just a small, private, spontaneous party. And I won't name any names, but there were some writers that I was looking at, and making chica with, because DC was asking us, maybe if we wanted to
Mm,
for the Star Wars book. And
yeah.
so I was talking, but I was that whole night I was thinking about something else, something personal.
Mm,
Okay,
okay.
so I I didn't turn on, I didn't put the face,
Yeah.
you know, and
Yeah.
for minutes on end, I was who I really was. Those writers and everybody else thought I was mad at them for they
Aw.
thought I thought that they were, what do you call it? They crashed my party.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So then I learned that when I'm quote unquote out there, I have to be that, because they won't understand anything personal, anything real. They'll take what they think. It's just that
Hmm.
moment for them. And that moment for them is real important. So, like, this is as talkative as I get, but it's because the camera's on, really. If we were sitting down
Hmm.
talking, I would be talkative and animated every now and then, but most of the time I'd be like, a YouTuber vlogger, guessing on another person's vlog just because they happen to be there.
Right.
The camera's on.
Right.
hey, come on, let's get. And then later, and you see them editing in the background, and they're
Wow, that is a revelation. So now I'm wondering, am I meeting the Will star when I see you in person? No, but I think I see the natural you when you are with your kids, though. So that's something, right? Well, however you relate to your kids, I think that's natural. But guys, if you've seen it,
well, see, what I'm really talking about there is that most of us artists are shy, right?
yes, yes,
And then you're Pinoy, so you're doubly shy, right? And
yeah,
here you are in quote unquote another country, so you're triply shy, and then now
yeah.
you're in front of an audience, you're quadruple shy, and so this actually is a great way to get yourself out of your skin and to explore who you are. So I say that a lot of my quote unquote on-screen personality is my on-screen personality, but that's from inside of me.
Sure, for sure. It's still you. It's still
it's
you. Yeah.
it's like this, Marcy. It's like this. You're who you are, and then you get a few drinks in you, and all of a sudden you become hyper you, right? That's it.
Okay, that's it. How many drinks have you had tonight? I don't know. No. So there we are. So you stayed 5 years. Yeah, I had actually, I wasn't in NU that long because after NU, I started the studio with Dino, Ignacio, and Neil, Jerry, JJ. And so we took on web design and things like that. And then, of course, we parted ways. But by then, I had known that, oh, I'm a marketing person. That is what I do. And eventually, I moved here, and that's the story. But to this day, I treasure everybody that I met there at that time, like you guys, the Alamat guys, the music guys, because I feel that in the 90s, during that super magic era, we all became who we are now because of that. And that, I guess, that's what we're trying to pinpoint what made it magical and what propelled us to do all the different things we did.
Well, like in my case, especially in the beginning, quote unquote, as an outsider, it
Yeah,
was, here I come and I find out that there is a comic audience here. Okay.
right.
And especially at that time, it was mostly a pretty upscale, I think, because of the exchange
Yes.
rate. They were selling comics, I think, 2 or 3 times above cover price.
Yes.
So it was only affordable to certain levels. But that audience, a lot of them then were actors or in business or band.
Hmm.
And so,
Yeah.
so for me, then it was like, here I bring in this little comic sliver in, and then River Maya and E-Heads and Francis come in and bring in the music side, but the connection is comics. But see, the energy of comics and the energy of music kind of like multiply together there. And then, publishing starting up and what do you call it? Entertainment, the raves were starting up back then, organizing parties and events, finding out San Miguel had a big entertainment budget, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
so the point is that all of a sudden, everybody wasn't just their own corner of the world. We were able to connect with other interests, but then add to each other. So, me talking with the E and Ellie about, possibly doing some stuff. You guys coming, hey, maybe you guys
Yeah.
do a logo and stuff. So we started connecting, but not just connecting as a business and go, okay, get paid and thank you. We
Right.
connected, stayed, and then we started blowing up more because there just seemed to be space back then, and
Yeah.
and I think a part of that was just everything pulling together, because what media is today now is, and this, you should know this as a writer, before today's era, if you were doing a horror book, you had to just stay within horror. You could not go
Yes.
anywhere near romance. You could not go anywhere near cowboys or science fiction. And you had to stay in your corner. One thing that
Hmm.
we did in Image, and one thing that's prevalent now in every media now, in every genre, is there is no walls anymore. And
Right.
so organically, I think back in the 90s in Manila, we felt that because of our other connections, that it wasn't just, okay, I'm politely just going to not tell you that, I'm a real bigwig in records. I'm not Wally Chamsai running Sony, with
Yeah.
Wally Chamsai, a guy named Wally come up and say, hey, Whilce, you got any ideas for, a Filipino comic book? And I go,
Hmm.
yeah, I'm thinking about something called Stone with a Gimats and stuff. And he goes, oh, well, hey, guess, maybe I could get, approval to do a collective album,
Album. Uh-huh.
and I could have you like pick songs from the whole Sony catalog.
Wow.
And that's just how organically it happened. A good friend
Right.
of mine is Salito Malka of
Mm-hmm.
Hit Studios, and so I'd hang out at the studios, and then Wally would come by with stars and stuff, and then invite me to Sony, and we'd go over there, and then we'd set up the deal, and he goes, hey, Sony's always looking for a new IP that we could bring into movies and games and stuff, and so if you could do this Stone thing that you're thinking about, I could do the album and I could pitch it to Sony. So everything
Wow.
started to just organically roll, because that's how Filipinos roll. I mean, like, as as a baligmine over here, you have a Filipino walking to any store, and then the cashier, Pinay ka ba? And then, oh, taga Manila ko. Oh, saan? Sa Quezon.
Yes, 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 yes.
Juicy ako din. We instantly connect, and it's because we want to connect. And,
Right.
I remember there was this story of some big journalists, and they were in the Philippines during one of the big typhoons, and they got pulled away from their entourage, and it started really coming down, and they got stuck in this little small village, and the
Yeah.
people there took them in. It turned out it was one of the journalists' birthday. They had an impromptu party. They didn't have a music rig, so it was just the MP3s on a phone. Other people were flashing their phones. They were pulling strangers were pulling in these foreigners, and that's who we are. And it's interesting. This foreigner then, in recollecting this story, he's from London, and he said that, I have to admit that, I really love that experience, and I thank the Philippines for giving me that in
Aw.
my life. But I have to admit that if in London a stranger from another country was stranded somewhere near me, I would like say, "You want to use my phone to call somebody?" But that's it. I would not
Wow.
invite them into my house, feed them, take care of them. It's just who we are, and I think that's what helped us in that time of, again, we were all kids. We were just young kids wanting to prove to our parents and the people upstairs that there's something else, and they were
That's true.
willing to listen, right?
Very, very cool. So yeah, it's that desire for connection. And I think that's why I'm so excited by these live streams, because I'm reconnecting with people I haven't spoken to in years. And then I'm also watching the creative things they're doing. Rico Blanco River Maya, he's doing his own little live stream to Perf, all these guys. And so here in California, I've connected with all these musicians that I didn't realize were here. And so I swear, after pandemic, guys, there's going to be an epic concert somewhere in LA. Wills will drive from where he is, I am sure, and it's going to be fun. So that's exciting.
Marcy,
Yeah,
one of you're right about that. I mean, all of the Zoom impromptu sessions and things like that. You know what I hope? I hope after this all, um, uh, I hope we all really connect. And there's a lot of good producer people out there, like you and Janelle and stuff, who are connected
yeah,
everywhere and know how to do the marketing style. Everything has to fall in place, right? You can't just be creative and hope people will get to it. I hope after this, we all we all start to understand that we can do it. We're proving every day in our quote unquote day jobs, we're professionals, that we can do these things. I mean, we have to face it. As Filipinos, I don't know how, but we somehow got this thing that we have to use our talent and skills and prove to those foreigners that we have the talent and the skill.
Yes, yes,
Where
yes.
anywhere else, it's you with your kababayans getting together and doing cool stuff. And I think that's what part of that spark back then was, of everybody getting together and doing other things. And I hope this starts, ABS once invited me up when they had the Redwood studio. And I was
Mm-hmm.
amazed that it was a full-fledged studio.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
I hope I don't hurt anybody's feelings, but I was amazed that it wasn't really being used. There's so much talent here. There's so much talent, and we're all Pinoys. We all know how to do this. We all have our dreams and our ideas and concepts. And
Yeah.
I hope we do it, and I hope we do it in the Filipino way. One thing that I want to spearhead, one thing that I've always pushed in all my meetings is we got to start being proud of who we are, and we got to stop this Gaia thing. You know,
Yes.
you know, you know, uh, there are so many concepts and ideas and stories that are Pinoy, Pinay, Kababayan, Balikbayan. We have such concepts, such involved, complicated concepts like Kuya, Pakikisama,
Yeah.
Ate. Ate is not just older sister. It's much more deeper than that. Pakikisama, you can't explain to anybody else. It's so complicated.
Hmm.
But we don't seem to be proud of that. We don't seem to be proud of who we are and wanting to put ourselves out there, all warts and everything, and show everybody who we are. But you know what? You know what? Just go on YouTube. I'm a YouTube kid in this quarantine. But
Yeah.
only watching like Manila and Pinas YouTube stuff. But if you just even glance at that, guess what you see? You see a ton of Koreans. You see a ton of Australians, people from the
Yes.
UK, people from the US, not only vlogging from Manila, but living there. And why? They all say, because we're just so nice people. It's just so much
Yeah.
safer. It's so much more real. They are proud of who we are as people. So I would like everybody out there to be proud that you're Pinoy, proud of our stories, proud of our funky little uncle, who's always shouting, complaining to people. But hey, you know, my uncle, he's got the personality of Henry Luna. You know, that's one of the reasons why that movie was so perfect, because it
Yeah.
showed historical figures as they really are. And if
Right,
you show
right.
characters as they really are, guess what? Your audience, the Pinoys out there, they will recognize that character and they will love that character. So I
Let's
hope.
vote for Wills. I'm just kidding. There is something though. See, listening to you now, I feel I'm nahihiya because I kept away from the Philippine scene here in the U.S. because while there are all those good pakikisama and all those positive things, there are negative things as
Oh yeah,
well.
oh yeah,
Old school crab mentality and stuff. So
oh yeah.
because of my fear of that, I didn't get involved. And then now that I'm rediscovering that part of me as well, um, I feel so alive and connected. I'm connected with film arts with G, Tonji. So it's exciting what she's doing in that space. And creating a space, actually, it's really different. We are Filipino, but being Filipino-American is also a different thing. So there's an opportunity there for sure. And maybe that's your role, Wills. It's like you're creating 55 balete, but in a larger scale. Um, you will be our spiritual leader because you are the ultimate kuya that guided all those amazing artists that all have these careers now. And they in turn are training the younger generation. So yeah, why not? Let's go a bigger platform. Let's take some questions. There's a question. Hala, they're all asking about my big concert idea. Um, so they're asking about my big concert idea. It's not really my idea. I believe Bowie Meneses from Parokya ni Edgar had said he had planned a concert with Melody from Sugar Hiccup, him, Wolf from Wolfgang, and Cynthia Alexander. He was planning to do that, and they actually had dates for it. But because of the situation, all those dates have been canceled. So we'll see how that plays out. We all don't know what's going to happen with live entertainment, but for sure, as soon as we can, we'll do that. If not, if we have to wait a little longer, we will definitely make something virtual happen. And I like the virtual world as well, because look, I'm talking to the US audience here, and there you are in Manila. Good morning to everybody. So it's cool. It's a bigger audience. We've got people in Australia listening, Indonesia, Thailand the last time. So it's a bigger audience. So there's opportunity there. So there's a question for you from Brian Casiano. If you were not a comic book artist, what would you be?
When I was a little kid growing up in the 60s, I originally wanted to be an astronaut. But I found out that I was too short, my eyesight was horrible, and my reflexes were slow. So I stopped wanting to be an astronaut right away. And right after that, believe it or not, that's when I picked up the guitar, and I probably would be in a band right now.
Really? So you're a musician too?
Because my voice was horrible back then.
You could play music. You could write. Yeah, of course you're Filipino because you play an instrument. You're Asian. So for you, it's guitar. Did you play any other instruments growing up?
Well, yeah, I mean, I had to learn piano and everything,
I,
actually, that was, me playing piano. That was my first connection with OPM.
oh,
As a teen, I got my first keyboard, because, playing the classical piano, that's what mom wants, right?
yes.
So I had to get my own keyboard. And my best friend at the time, he already knew how to play keyboard. And then he brought this song over, and he goes, "Hey, we gotta figure out this song. We gotta dissect it and try to figure out all the parts." Well, that was a Gary V song.
Wow.
Mean son.
Oh.
Well, I forget.
He's singing, guys. He's singing. Thank you.
But we figured it out, and then we figured out, oh wow, that was Gary V. And then we started gobbling up those CDs, and then he came over and did a concert, and then that's when my eyes opened up, because again, up until this point as a teenager in America, I was just ensconced in being American.
Right. You never heard the music. Yeah.
Right. I never heard the music, and then I see, wow, there's this big crowd, and they're all and they know all the songs. And Gary himself is just an electric entertainer. And then,
by the way, I think he's a vampire, because have you seen him? He has not aged. Gary V is a vampire.
No, I can confirm that. My wife and him are close friends, and I met him he was signing at Seafood City one day.
Oh, wow. Uh-huh.
And we're the same age. I think we're almost exactly the same age.
Yeah.
He might be a little bit younger, slightly younger. But yeah, he looked totoy when I walked up there.
It's crazy. His energy too. That's the thing. I get you can look young, but his energy is still the same. So yeah, that's another thing. OPM as well. Like I find myself sometimes I'll sing Sharon Cuneta song or something while I'm doing dishes over here, and our household is mixed. So my husband is white, and so sometimes he'll be like, "What's that?" or he'll reference something American. I go, "Well, it's my childhood is mixed with Filipino and OPM. There's like, we have rock music in common, and we'll talk about those songs or new wave songs and stuff. But then there's this whole other side of me. That's Sharon Cuneta, that's Gary V, and all that stuff. That would be cool to be able to share with the world our music for sure. So maybe our way. I think suddenly it's cool to be Filipino here right now in America. I can see it with the kids, our kids.
You know what? It even goes deeper than that. Okay, My kids, when they were about, don't kill me, kids, when they were about 12 and 14, right? Okay,
Yeah.
my two
Our
youngest.
kids are the same age, actually. Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so they're when they were 12 and 14, and they're born and raised here, right? So they don't
Yeah.
know nothing about the Philippines.
Yeah.
Well, at that age, we bring them back to the Philippines for the very first time. Okay,
Uh-huh.
and we're lucky enough to spend 5 weeks in Manila and Olongapo, where my
Wow.
wife is from. And here we are going from Fairview, right? Fairview, to
Fairview.
Makati, because my wife and her sisters want to go shopping, and we don't have any of the young cousins there. They're all working,
Right.
so they can't drive us. So
Yeah.
my wife goes, "Hey, good experience for the kids to take the bus." And so
Wow.
here we are in traffic, and I'm worried, and I go to my 12-year-old and I go, Kai, are you okay? I mean, the traffic. And she turns
Yeah.
to me and she goes, just like LA traffic. And I turn to my other son, to my son, and I go, "Hey, Prince, what about the heat? I mean, are you okay?" And I'm
Right.
expecting, the typical, whining, and he goes, "Just like being in New Mexico or Phoenix, you know."
Wow.
And it was interesting because, when you and I would go back to the Philippines, and especially when I was young, it was always the American point of view that, oh, it's too hot, oh, there's too much traffic,
Right.
oh, it's not like the US. But my kids were reacting different. And so I did a little research. And my kids have a special little place because they have 16 grown up cousins.
Uh-huh.
And at that time when they were 12 and 14, they were all college age. And our college kids, they did not complain that they were babysitters to my two little kids who can't speak
Right.
Tagalog.
Yeah.
They just engulfed them. They
Aw.
engulfed them. And so 5 weeks later, we go back to the Philippines, and my girl's gonna kill me, but she cried for 3 straight nights.
Oh, she bonded with her cousins for
Yeah,
sure.
and I asked her, so what was it? What was it? Because I'm fortunate I have a relationship with my kids that we could talk and talk and talk. And you know what she said? She said, I love it here in the US, but I can't believe there's a country where people are actually nice.
Aw.
And then so I
Yeah.
go, okay, tell me one of your great happenings there. And you know what it was? It was
What?
Kuya getting in the van with all the other cousins, driving to the 7-Eleven, buying soda for the Handa late that night, and that's it.
That's it. It wasn't the trips to
Just
the beach. It
hanging
wasn't
out.
the,
Yeah,
yeah.
just hanging out, just spending time together.
Wow. Very
And
cool.
that's what we have to offer. And I think every foreigner that gets to go to the Philippines and can somehow get into the real Philippines, that's what they find. They find that we just like to squeeze every bit of nice out of
Right, right.
every part of the day, right? You know,
Yeah.
your friend had, parents died, and so, but you're real busy with work. You have your last gig, like 12 o'clock midnight. You go, Sige, I'll be there 2 a.m.
Yeah.
You've got to get to work at 6, in a couple hours. Just the way we roll, right? We
I
just,
guess. Yeah.
we just,
Fun, fun.
but there's an energy, there's
There
a,
is, there is. So hopefully we can tap that. I know it's a difficult time right now with lockdown and things, and it's hard to think of these nice things, but we can focus on that. But also, see, we were talking about our kids that there is that energy. At least something that's changed, like from when you were a kid here, is that they're not ashamed to be Filipino or part Filipino anymore. I don't think. I think there's that, and it has a lot to do with the kids on YouTube. Like one day, my son comes in, says something in Tagalog, and I sadly had not taught him. And I said, "How did you know that?" "Oh, I was watching someone on YouTube." Then he tells this story. This YouTuber, he goes, "Oh my God, it's Alex Wasabi." He goes, "He bought his mom a house." Okay. So I go, remember that. That's the Filipino way. You are going to buy me a house someday. We gotta, look out for our elders and pay them back.
But
Um,
I have to give it to the YouTubers, the Korean
yes.
ones and the foreign ones, because I mean, this is a bit of what we were talking about before. I mean, right now, everybody that goes back to the Philippines, you know, most of them will hear about, MOA or something, or BGC, but
Yes.
every single one of them will want to go to Siargao. Now,
Yes.
come on, we have to admit to ourselves. Before foreigners and vloggers and surfers started to going Siargao, it was still Siargao. It was always
Yes.
Siargao. But back in the day, it was malayo naman eh, and
Yes.
ano
Yes.
yun eh, But then when
Yeah.
everybody started loving it and YouTubers showing the world it, now everybody wants to go there, and that's what
Yeah.
that's what I'm talking about, where we've got to love ourselves. We've got to understand we have, like, especially in our hard environments of advertising and showbiz
Hmm.
and music and comics and business, you know we work our butts off. We're
Yes.
work. But you have to admit with me that, okay, if there's some vacation time, if we're able to steal some time and we're here in the States, staycation, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's too expensive, too far to,
Yeah. Yeah.
to do anything because you got to plan it. But if we were back in Manila, Friday of a long weekend, I'd call you up and say, hey, let's go to Pagutpud, or let's go to
I can dream. Yes. Yes.
and it's just, like, okay, a few minutes thinking, and sige, and we just do it because it's just there. It's
Yes.
so much easier to deflate, right? To
Yeah.
de-stress, because just 2 or 3 or 4 hours away, there's this place where it's nothing like the corporate
Yeah,
hustle.
yeah. And you're right. It's easier for us to say, okay, yeah, I'll spend time with you. Like
Yeah,
whenever, like I just visited last year and I had friends who, because of traffic, whatever, it's so hard to get to wherever you are. It's like doubly hard,
yeah,
but they'll block out a day. I'm with you today, even if we're just hanging out. We don't have to do anything. So that is beautiful. Nakakamiss naman. I can't wait to travel again. I don't know when that will be. But in the meantime, we have us, we have this Filipino community, we have this online community, and it's where we are now. And being Filipino, let's make the most of it, right? That's what we do. We adapt, we make things, we're resourceful. There you go. So we make do with what we have. I'm going to jump in and just show a little side project that you did for Comic Odyssey, so that we can wrap it up and get back to sadly, our kwentuhan will be over. But we can have part two, any topic. Next time, we can talk about food, Wills,
hey,
right? Talk about the food. I think that's also something that's introducing us to the world. Finally, people are acknowledging Filipino food. I think it's thanks to ube, ube everything. Um,
well,
I,
not to get into it, a lot of it is because of the freshness. I'm a diabetic. You know,
yeah,
when I was there for that 5 weeks with my kids, I,
yeah.
I, I I was on
You
vacation.
ate a lot. Yeah.
So yeah, so I had a mango shake every day. Every day I
Oh
had
my
a mango
gosh.
shake. But when I got back home in
Yeah.
California after 5 weeks, I'd lost 20 pounds. And
Oh.
my doctor pulled me off of my insulin. Okay.
Oh,
And
wow,
so,
cool.
so the fool in me goes, okay, I'm gonna do mango shake every day over here. And I couldn't. The reason was
Hmm.
that in the Philippines, mango shake is a mango,
It's from a mango,
milk
yes.
and ice, and maybe some syrup, a little syrup. Over here, it's chemical fillers or
Yeah,
bananas or oranges. It's 10 times the calorie, you know.
yeah,
And that's one thing I realized. We are still one of the countries, and the US used to be like this. US,
yeah,
it's Philippines is still one of the countries, even though we have every single fast food chain in Europe and Asia and the US there, mom still cooks.
yes.
Everybody still cooks. You could even go to a Pinoy fast food and they will still
Right.
go to the market that morning to
Yeah,
get
yeah.
fresh ingredients. We're not talking about flat freeze frying, chemical
Right.
or stuff. Everything is fresh, and
That's
so
why McDonald's tastes different there too.
well, we also try new stuff. We're so adventurous, right?
Yeah.
Look at
Yes, for sure.
menu items in McDonald's or KFC or over there. Even just Starbucks, they have a lot of stuff that we don't have over here. But a lot of it is just that fresh thing. And I realized
Yeah.
that on the Santa Fe ones. I had a convention up in Sacramento, and my girl wanted to go because Bucky was there.
Ah.
And so we decided to use the train, and it was a
Oh,
16-hour thing because we never did it, and the scenic thing, and,
nice.
and the dining cart. Even though it was a great thing, we were there with this old lady who'd been riding the train ever since she was a kid, and she still is uses the train to visit her kids. And she
Yeah.
lamented though on one thing. She said that when she was a kid, she would wake up in the morning because she could smell a breakfast. She could smell bacon and eggs. So that's why she knew it's time to get up and go to the dining car.
Oh,
Well, we
okay.
can't smell that anymore because everything is microwave.
Yeah.
And we have so many places that are microwave. And the Philippines still is one of those places. And there are not that many countries that still do this. But the Philippines still is one of those places where almost everything is actually cooked. And
Yes. Cook for you for
it's
that moment.
greasy
Yeah.
maybe, depending on, or something. But it's fresh. It's fresh ingredients. And
Yeah.
I, as a diabetic, have understood the benefits of that. For the
Yeah.
15 years of my life, I was a diabetic life. I was doing all the things my doctor said, taking all the medicine, but eating all the processed food that we had,
Hmm.
even in high-end restaurants. And I was not losing any weight. I lost the weight by a couple of things, but one of the major things was doing my own cooking.
Eating fresh. Oh, cool, cool.
Cooking my own cooking, so I know what's in there, you know,
Right.
because I have
Are you a good cook?
I eat it.
Pandemic kitchen, guys. Yeah, well, like you said, that is one thing that's happening. Everyone now is having to cook at home. So maybe change as well for American culture. That's interesting. Okay, so I'm gonna show this little illustration that you made. Can you talk us through this?
This is a series of drawings, and this is my drawing. It's to honor the frontliners. So we're using the metaphor of my field superheroes, and how the frontliner is the real superhero. So you see the frontliner mask, and to comment on a comment on one of the social networks. This is the basic mask. Most hospitals, because of funding and stuff, and because of how 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 consuming this pandemic is, a lot of the frontliners are only they can only now get just the basic stuff right now. And
Yeah.
my point here was that here you have all these superhero masks, and like Iron Man, it's all high tech. Catwoman, she's got the great goggles. Captain America, he's such a symbol, but they're empty compared to the mask that our frontliners use, because they actually put their life on the lines. So the rest of the series, like there's a series of doing the same kind of concept, but with gloves. You know,
Oh, cool, cool.
there's going to be another one with the first one was Lanil Yu, and it was the coats. So it was a frontliner,
Oh, okay.
and then you see Spider-Man's costume hanging on a hanger,
Oh, nice.
Superman's costume hanging on the hanger. But again, straight in the middle, the important position is the frontliners thing, and that's one of that's just one of that's just a great idea, and it came from Comic Odyssey and Phil Bars, Sila Ivan and Sila Sandy. Um, like especially Ivan, he's a advertiser guy actually before he got into business, and so this was his idea, and it was a great way to take superheroes and not have them overpower the true heroes. Because my job is to prop up heroes, to create heroes, to maintain heroes, to maintain the lessons and myths of heroes. But as we all should know, and I think we all do know, the real heroes are within us, within ourselves. You know, Jack Kirby and Stan Lee are people. They're great people. They created a lot of these superheroes, but they're people. And you know, so everything comes from all of us. And every day of this quarantine around the world, it's the frontliners out there. You
Yes,
know?
and they're still doing the work. So please, America, wear a mask. That's all I can say. Hey, if you were a superhero, who would you be?
Me, I would be any superhero that could fly.
Ah,
Because
so
that,
which means the power you want is the power of flight.
yeah, because then at a whim, I'm in Manila. And then before my wife realizes I'm not there, I'm back.
But don't you be eating some isaw or anything like that in secret. Not part of your diet.
I cannot go to Sarsa.
Oh my gosh. What else? So, are you doing anything not comic book related to keep yourself, or not drawing related to keep yourself creative these
Um,
days?
Fortunately, you know, because the universities shut down too, my kids are here. And so almost every night is either a movie night or just long conversations of life, you know, and I cherish those
Wow.
moments. You know, that's maybe that's incentive for all would-be parents, you know. Do not, as a parent of three kids, do not be your kid's best friend. You know, you still
Yeah.
have to be a parent. You know, you can be part-time best friend, but do not be a full-time best friend.
Yes, I think that's, yeah, that's something my kids have realized. They go, you know what? With their other friends, they go, hey, why do they talk to their parents like that? I go, can't talk to me like that. So they know kids are smart. So I think that's another good thing about being locked down. Yeah, our college kids are home, yay. And it's time to spend together. So we've been doing, well, now things are opening up, but we would go, even at first, it was just a drive just to get out. And so we drive like a PCH, Pacific Coast Highway, just to breathe the air but not get out of the car. But now that things are slowly opening up, we're finding secret trails so that we can hike. And then sometimes I post it on my social media and they'll say, where is that? And I go, I can't tell you. I'll DM you because I don't want a lot of people to go there, because then that'll ruin it. So that's something you can do too, is walk around, I guess.
You know, my kids are very creative, like myself, and so
Yeah.
we're taking advantage of the fact that like a friend of mine, Eddie Rocha from TBA, he's now put almost all his catalog of movies online in YouTube for free.
Oh, cool,
So,
cool.
so
We'll
you
maybe link that up.
yes, I mean, you could watch some really good movies, really thoughtful movies. Some of the other companies are following suit. So for the first time, you know, like when I was a kid, you know, I've always been interested in film. So even when I was a
Hmm.
kid, I'd heard of Lino Broca, but
Yes.
there's no way to
To
see.
watch it. Yeah.
You know, now you can go on Netflix, and I hope it's still there. A couple years ago, I found on Netflix, I think 3 or 4 Lino Broca movies, and
Really?
and then another friend of mine, Mr. G, Tony Gloria, he had a lot of his movies, like with Shawi
Hmm.
and stuff, like Crying Ladies, on Netflix. And so
Really?
now it's really cool. I could expose my kids to some really good actresses, like Vilma and Shawi,
Yeah.
and some good directors, you know, especially the young new directors and stuff, like like Eric Mati the Red family. I mean the Red family. You know, it's really cool because because of their visits back in the Philippines, they now have this interest into like when I went back to the Philippines to absorb as much as they
Very
can.
cool.
Really cool that now they can be exposed to it. So like one of the best nights we had was that they sent me the link for I don't know if you know, but El Huling El
Oh,
Bimbo.
Huling El Bimbo. Yes, yes.
Yeah,
I watched it too.
yeah, the stage production of it.
Mm-hmm.
My kids were enthralled.
Real.
Enthralled.
They
Amazing.
didn't watch it. Hmm. Yeah, my kids didn't, but then they heard me humming the rest of the next day, and they're like, "Hey, that's the Eraserheads," because that is the one CD that they listen to from that time for me is the Eraserheads. So they go, "Hey, that's the Eraserheads music." So
All the
cool.
songs are on my kids' playlist, even
Oh wow.
before the production of that. But it's
Yeah.
a great time to be able to expose the Balikbayan kids over here who get very little chance to see what it's to
Yeah.
what the Philippines is like because and it's no fault of the news because that's their job, but
Yeah.
most exposure is the news and 5 minutes
It's kind
is not
of
good stuff,
yeah.
and so our kids don't learn all the positive, all of the good over there, and so it's pretty good. It's real cool to be able to expose them to the music, to the movies, and pretty soon now working with a group of my friends, just a small tease, we're working on a comic book that's set in these times with frontliners.
What? Really?
Real
Wow.
world using Agimats and the Third Eye. It's going to be totally Pinoy.
Wow. Very, very cool. I'm glad that, this situation has inspired you to create something new. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me. And thank you to everybody that watched again. Brian, Carla, Michael. And he says, thanks for signing my X-Men comics and Bishop action figures, Sir Wills. Patrick Salonga, Michael Capuno. Maraming salamat sa inyo. Thank you so much for watching. So I think lesson is we can recapture that magical time. I'm so thankful that in the 90s, Decada 90, I was able to meet amazing people like Wills and the rest of the crew. And it's not lost. I think you just have to be, I think the thing we were at the time was open. We were open to ideas, open to meeting new people, open to collaborating, open to getting out of our little boxes, like you said. I'm not just a music person. I'm not just a comics person. I mean, I came from fashion and I'm not a fashion person, that sort of thing. So just being open to all that. And now with the internet, social media, let's not look at the negative stuff, but use it. Use it as, the power of social and internet to connect, like we are doing with you and with Wilkes right now. One thing I've been asking people who have stuck with us, we are now 93 minutes. Thank you guys. Next time we'll have food, I promise. Um, but I just I'm inviting people, if anybody, for example, if you got a comic book, if you have a copy of Stone from that time, I want to know how that inspired you back in the 90s because I'm trying to collect stories of the 90s decade. So I'm only looking from 1990 to 1999, especially in the Philippines. Tell me about the music that affected your life, the comic book that you read that changed your life or made an impact. Please message me. Follow Wills. He is also on Instagram. And I think he's teaching some comic book classes as well, right?
Yeah, me and a couple of some pros that I've worked with we're still kind of family. We're doing with the last 2 months. We're doing online workshops
Very cool.
for all different aspects of the comic producing media, and we're just giving back. We're just taking use of the media, the medium,
Mm.
Zoom, to just interact and connect, with aspiring artists, aspiring writers. Um, I think that's one of the good things about this. I mean, we always did workshops, quote unquote, in the real world, but
Yeah.
when you go to and usually during the conventions, and as you know, those are huge affairs, and so usually it's a room packed with a lot of people, and
Yeah.
you can't really talk to everybody. You can't really, art is personal, and so in our Zoom sessions, we only have like 20, 25
Oh, cool.
people, and we do homework, and we critique every homework, every bit of homework to give that personal touch. So we're just, in our way, trying to give back, trying to, identify and help out in any way we
Very
can the
cool.
next generation.
Yes, definitely. So it's not too late to join one of those, right? Because I know it started like yesterday, one of the workshops.
Yeah, we just went through our second intermediate course of
Mm.
4 weeks. And in a week or two, no, 3 weeks, because we have one more week left. I would think we can take a break week, and then the week after that, then we're going to start some intermediate courses where we're going to get more and more advanced as we start to recognize and identify people that are really serious about this. This isn't very complicated art or anything. It's just, the artist's mind. As a budding artist, no matter what field, you're just that kid in your bat cave at home, banging away, and you do something right, but there's nobody to tell you, hey, that's right, you did it.
Yeah.
And we find as teachers, that's actually one of the biggest things that we can give. I mean, everybody knows what they suck at. I
Yeah.
can't draw hands. I hate background. But if there's nobody there that they respect, that has experience, and tell them, wow, your faces are beautiful, your faces are spot on, or your poses are so natural, they won't know that because there's nobody to
Very
tell
cool.
them that. So that's the other side of teaching that we really try to push, which I think is one of the most important parts of pushing an artist along. And I'm just thankful that because of comics, there are a lot of people now that really, really want to explore that part of themselves and maybe discover, something within themselves.
Very cool. Very, very cool. Thank you so much again. Thank you, thank you. And I will see you online and hopefully in person in a few months. And
In,
what's that?
in Manila.
No, that'll be a while in Manila, don't you think? I don't know.
Well, I'm helping out some people doing conventions for the last 4 years. I was
Yeah,
I was helping out, bringing guests over for a producer from Dubai of all places. He just left the
nice.
Philippines, and I'll talk to the producers. I'll get you on the guest list.
Oh my God, I would love to do that because I've been trying to find a project that will make me go to the Philippines more. Yeah, that
Well,
like I do want.
we could do this. I mean, we could do what we could, again, like you say, revisit, our old professional selves, and
Maybe.
like one thing I've always been pushing in a lot of the conventions is that, say, something that people don't know, us creatives in comics, almost all of us, or a lot of us, are frustrated musicians, and
Yes.
so um, the announcing to my comic guests that, like Ellie Buendia or the E-Heads will
Hmm.
reunion, or Sila Paco, or
Hmm.
Basti to come along. We usually have our conventions at MOA, and there's that big open field for concerts.
Hmm.
So I've been pushing it for my producers that, hey, why don't we have a concert night? You
You
know,
mean they haven't done that yet? Yeah, you
no,
need that.
no,
You definitely.
and here's a really quick story. The reason that happens is because they don't know.
Yeah.
I did a lecture at Southern Methodist University in Texas.
Hmm.
Um, there's a big gaming college there, and the two art directors there are actually old students of mine. Two
Wow.
beautiful Texan guys. I mean, so polite and such real good people. But they invited me over there to do a lecture for their gaming graduate classes. And while I was there, the human resources person was a big Spawn fan, and I was drawing Spawn at the time. And so she had to have lunch with me, and she said something just blew my mind. She said
Mm-hmm.
that, Whilce, last year for the graduating class as a speaker, we brought in I think it was George Lucas, and
What?
and he
Uh-huh.
came in and he did this great speech and stuff, and I was the one that set it up. And then she goes, I'm glad the brothers knew you, and we could get you here through them, because this is her word. I never thought that I could actually talk to you. She can
Wow.
talk to George Lucas, but she thinks she can't
I
talk to me.
know.
You
We
know, but
all have our heroes, you know?
but see, that's what's important about organizers and managers and producers and stuff. They cut through that shy tape that I call it. And because every time, I don't know, I'm pretty sure your experience too. Every time I break through and meet somebody in showbiz, meet somebody in Hollywood, meet somebody in special effects or animation and stuff, it's always, oh wow, they're as interested as I am about them.
Yes.
You know,
Right.
there's that
Right.
mythology that, oh, we don't want to mingle, oh, we're
Yeah.
in our
Yeah.
own ponds and stuff. And so I think that's what you could help me spread.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You are encouraging me. And of course, all these people that are watching that are gonna hold me to my word about having some kind of concert. We're gonna do that. Yes, someone even mentioned that during a Comic Con in Pasig, Kamikaze did play a set. So they are trying, they are doing it, but we will definitely do something magical once we are able to return to Manila. But in the meantime, we will do our little parts here in America and the little Asian American communities and stuff and share it with the world. So that is amazing. I'll just have to say again, thank you. Then I'm going to take you off the broadcast. If you want to say bye to your fans, give them a message. Sir Wills, I'm going to give you a solo so that you can talk to your fans.
You're a partner with that. Thank you all for spending time with us in this Chica moments here, just hanging out. I'm a Jet Rocks at heart, so I love just hanging out and just connecting with everybody. Thank you for spending time here, listening to us. I hope you, all the females out there, I hope you take part in some of the things that we talked about, and understand and really feel who we are, especially in this time. Our warmth, our connection to our families and to our extended families, to I have so many friends that are still friends with, are still in contact with their grade school, their high school, with their workmates from the first job or second job. I really believe in connection. Connection is a safety net, especially in times like this, where we think, and rightfully so, that the world is pretty hard and kind of deadly sometimes. In those times, I really believe the more connections you have to each other and anybody else, everywhere, the bigger that safety net is for you. So that I don't know about you, but for me, it helps you get through the time that you feel that there are people around you, there are people you can turn to, even just to do like what me and Marcia are doing, just chicaing it out right now, and just talking and
Yeah,
connecting. So be proud you're
definitely.
Pinoy, you know, be Pinoy and represent.
Thank you so much, Wills. We'll see you again. And
Yes, yes,
who knows what we'll do because this was so much fun. I apologize to the people. The sound is cutting out, technology. But thank you so much, Wills. Have a good evening and have a great weekend. And I'll see you again for sure.
for sure,
As
for
soon
sure.
as we can go out, I will go go over. I will meet you halfway. We can meet Temecula. I don't know. All right. I'll see you soon. Bye.
I'll see you. Bye.
Okay, bye, Wills.
Bye.
All right, guys. So thank you so much for watching and for your patience. I'm so sorry the audio did cut out when Wills was talking, but basically he's encouraging everybody to stay connected, be proud of being Filipino, and during this time to reach out and connect with people. I know I've been reaching out to even like my old classmates from grade school and stuff like that, and because we have the time, and be nice, be human, be open to new ideas, be creative. Take this chance to do creative things, even if it's cooking a new dish, trying a new dish. So there. Lastly, I want to say I'm excited that on Saturday I want to try this new streaming platform. It's called StreamYard, and Charlie Y will join me. Hopefully, everything works out technically. So it's kind of NU related. I am not sure what Charlie and I will be talking about, but maybe we can get him to play some music for you. If you have any questions, just send them over. I will read them. And if you have questions for Wills, I will send them over to him as well. Thank you so much. Maraming salamat. Good morning, Manila. Good evening, USA. See ya.